Okay. Call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Irrigation District Board of Directors, April 27th, 2020. You all join me with the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Division 1?
Here.
Division 2?
Here.
Division 3? Here. Division 4? Division 5?
Here. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll take public comment on any item not on the agenda. If this is pertinent to NID, if you'd like to comment at this time, start on your phone or come to the podium. Otis, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak on 4 items on Plan for Water, short items. The first is really to thank this board for the last Plan for Water meeting. Originally, it was going to be some kind of a half-hour presentation from the Edis family on behalf of Native people's kind of perspective. And it was a delicious 2.5 hours, and I think that was time well spent. And it's really about understanding paradigms. And there's a lot of different publics that you're working with, and they each have a paradigm, and they each have their own interests. And I think it was really telling at the very end, while there was a slide on no centennial dam, which is not a surprise when you understand that paradigm. Also, I think it was Director Heck that noted there are a lot of possibilities working together, even across that kind of a large distance. And, an example of that could be Bear Valley, restoration of that meadow. You're already in meadow restoration. That's a fine candidate and has a lot of potential. The second piece on that is Bear Valley is still owned by PG&E, part of the Drum Spalding system. And as I mentioned last fall when you were noting the infrastructure, you are already served by Drum Spalding. When they get their license for the Drum Spalding system, it is unimaginable that they won't put it on the market immediately. If you look at the lack of profitability of PG&E's hydro system, either the liabilities from fire from their hydro systems and their transmission lines, they are going to get shut of that as soon as possible. And so not having that in the Plan for Water, when you have a horizon of 50 years or 25 or 10, even 5-year horizon will probably see divestment of that infrastructure. And that would transform your whole Plan for Water. As an example, every drop of water that goes to the end of the Drum Spalding system, which is that's the Rattlesnake Bar powerhouse on Folsom, could be redirected back at South Fork Yuba water and Bear River water. That can be directed back to the flows in both the Yuba, the Bear, and can serve additional needs. It could serve water supply, it could serve groundwater recharge, it can serve environmental flows. All kinds of things could change if that were included in the Plan for Water. So I don't think you could be actually successful in a Plan for Water if you don't embrace what is logically going to be your future. The third suggestion about Plan for Water is, as you've seen the paradigm of the Native people's interests, that's but one very diverse set of stakeholders. And when you get down to nuts and bolts of this plan, I really think it would serve management if you would be getting a neutral facilitator. If the neutral facilitator can navigate those chasms where your general manager has to be an advocate for the organization, has to be an advocate for the end option, the end product, the outcome, which inevitably is going to be distasteful to one or another stakeholder. And you can't both advocate for the organization and for its choices and also be neutral in that. And so I again advocate for a neutral facilitator. And lastly, when it does come to paradigms, and I mentioned it last meeting, and I promise this is the last one I'm doing, I hope that Director Beerwagen had a chance to reflect on the remarks I made last time. Paradigm of being an elected official, running for election, and having the role of the chair of the board, where you have to embrace all of the options and all of the representative views. You were very honest and candid in your remarks, advocating for Centennial and the kind of agricultural regard of a local river as a low elevation ditch, drainage ditch. You can't advocate for a balanced neutral plan for water and run for election with that level of honesty. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth at the same time. And it really undermines the plan for water. So again, I ask, you have a vice chair who I've known for a number of years, my daughter, living in our flower farm together and all those kinds of things. I've never heard that director in opposition to any particular option, including Centennial Dam. You have an opportunity to allow that process to go over the next year and a half under the stewardship of a neutral chair. You have the opportunity to run for election with the honesty of your opinions. But talking out of both sides of your mouth does not serve either your own integrity in your own election or the integrity of the plan for water. So I appeal again, it's a personal choice, and I hope you reflect on it and make a wise choice. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Otis. Let's see, we have Bob with his hand raised. Go ahead, Bob. Mute yourself.
You may not have intended to raise his hand.
Okay, we'll try again.
Yeah.
Oh, there we went.
Oh,
Okay, I think you're right. Okay, go ahead, sir.
My name is Daniel Wojak, and I live in North Auburn off of Droger Road. The NID has they're using Dead Man Creek for flowage, and across Lynn Lane crosses Dead Man Creek. Now, at where it crosses, there's a bridge. And in the past, I've contacted Doug at NID, and they've resurfaced the timbers on that bridge twice. I purchased property in the early 70s. We moved onto the property in 77. And since that time, NID has resurfaced that, put new timbers on that bridge twice. We have a neighbor who lives really close to the house, and when anybody crosses that bridge, if it's solid, there's no problems. But as soon as the bridge starts to degrade, the timbers start clapping and making loud noises. He contacts me, and I contact NID, and generally Doug comes out and looks at the timbers and replaces it. Well, October or September of last year, the neighbor contacted me again. I contacted NID, and now I've been told, no, we don't do that. We don't do bridges. Well, the original easement was for $1 and the installation of a bridge and the maintenance thereof. That was a long time ago. That's not a bad deal, especially if you've only had to replace it twice in 50 years. Now, I have a suggestion. Instead of replacing it with timbers or concrete into the sides of the timbers and bolt that to the bridge. That way you don't have to worry about the timbers degrading. You have concrete, it would be reinforced with rebar and about the same thickness as the timbers, and you'd never have to worry about that bridge ever again. So, I've been in contact with Jennifer Hansen, and I haven't heard anything from her in a few weeks, so I thought I'd come up here and ask you people what you think about it. It's part of the contract, and I hope you honor your contract. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, anybody else like to comment on any item not on today's agenda? Turn on your phone or step up to the podium. Okay, seeing none, we will move on with our agenda. This agenda. Anybody want to remove some items?
I would.
All right,
I'd like to remove item 3A, 3C, and 3D, please.
3A, 3C, and what?
3D.
3D. Anybody else? Okay, we'll entertain a motion for 3B, 3E. Consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve consent items 3B and 3.
Right.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, you call the roll. Oh, no, any member of the public like to comment on this consent agenda at this time? Start on your phone. All right, Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3, Division 2.
Aye. Okay, Director Peters, 3B.
3A.
3A, I'm sorry.
Okay, the March 23rd minutes. I'm surprised that, so I'd like to ask Director Heck if she's satisfied with the revision on the minutes.
Well, thank you for asking the question. I had concerns, and I think the best way to state my concern is, I get that there's supposed to be summary minutes, but I felt that the board direction was to make certain that Director Beerwagon's comments about Bear River and Centennial were included. And they're not, those specific comments were not included here. Yeah, there was, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bullets that were included. So, I think it's important that we modify the minutes to reflect the actual comments that were so divisive in the community, and were true. I mean, it was a true thing that he said that, but that's not reflected here. So that was my sense.
And that was my sense as well when I read that. I thought that the reason people were upset was because of these statements. And that how can he be unbiased when he's already saying, and he's always telling me, why are you talking so much? It doesn't affect your vote. Your vote, I know what I'm going to vote, and you've always told me that. Don't say it if it's not going to affect my vote. And if we pre-decided what our vote is, how can you, in good faith, move forward? As Mr. Rowland mentioned in his public comments, that the plan for water is tainted now. And I think that I was insulted to hear that they believe that the Bear River is a low elevation drainage ditch. And the Native and Indian, that community, the indigenous community, is really insulted. And I think it's unconscionable. And so I agree. I think that it go in the minutes as such. How can you run? How can you run on that platform when we're trying to do this plan for water? So I'm still pretty upset about this whole thing. So I agree that it should be spelled out.
Well, here's the last one. I'll say this last thing and then I'll stop. That to include the statements that we all heard, I think is prudent. And then this issue will recede, but the more that we have to keep revisiting it, the more it brings it up, right? And so I mean, the folks who were very insulted and were very concerned will be that way. They have their reasons, but I think if we just deal with it honestly, yes, this is what was said, okay, let's continue on to the next item. I mean, that's kind of, I just feel like it'll be better if we just say it, as opposed to 9 other bullets that don't say it. That was my thought, and I'm done.
I think there's, you know, how we want to approach the minutes generally, and I do see that we identify the 9 other bullets Ricky referenced, and, I mean, I don't understand why we would have these 9 bullets and not have that bullet, because that was part of the conversation. If we didn't have all the other 9 bullets, then I could see, okay, if there was just some very short summary of Director Beerwagen's comments, then I could see that. But we do have these 9 detailed comments, so it seems inconsistent with the practice that we're employing here. So I don't know how management would differ in that.
Yeah, so from a policy perspective, the minutes as written now are not consistent with the standard of summary. And I do believe that we should stick to the standard of summary, just from the perspective that we're picking and choosing specific statements when it was previously agreed upon through policy that we're summarizing. Now, with that said, you know, staff was put in this unique position. The conversation was actually very long that occurred. And there's 2 statements that I have heard that the board or members of the board would like to have stated in there, and they were a very small piece of the overall conversation. One was in reference to the low elevation drainage ditch, and so just from a professional perspective, it puts staff in a bad position when we're putting items in the minutes that are somewhat intended to reflect negative views of what was said. You know, was it a reflection necessarily of, it obviously was taken negatively by the public, which I can understand why, but it's the reasoning or the request for it to be in there is also more of a, continuing this negative reflection. The second item regarding Centennial is actually a response from a direct question from Director Peters. So when we started doing the minutes, it started getting really messy very quickly, and we just decided to step out of try to raise the level back up to the standard of summary, but we're happy to do whatever the board desires. We just need clear direction.
Well, I thought actually, you know, Jen, you and I talked about this, I actually thought the direction was really clear, that we wanted statements about those 2 negative statements the public heard and caused such a concern among the public that we wanted those statements included. And so to depart from policy and put these 9 bullets in here and not have the matter that the board and the community all knows should be in there seems disingenuous in some ways. So, you know, I really feel like we just, if you're going to put 9 bullets and you add 2 more and you say that's what it was the truth. It doesn't put, I don't see where it puts staff in any bad situation. We just said, reflect what was said.
Yeah, I think there might have been a misunderstanding on my part. I didn't take it as direction to put those 2 specific statements in there. I took it as direction to expand on it, but that could have been just simply my misunderstanding.
Can I get clarification? So where it started getting a little tricky is it turned into a discussion. So questions started being asked and there was a discussion amongst the board. And so instead of having a board member's comment, then it branched into a conversation. And so do we want the whole conversation or just to add those 2 additional comments reflecting to the low level drainage ditch and Centennial Reservoir? Add those 2 bullets and we're good? Or do I need to go into the conversation that got us there? Because it was all responsive, that part of it was responsive.
It was, and that was where it's getting to be very inconsistent with a summary.
But it was an inconsistent whole discussion. I mean,
And it was,
the whole thing was.
yeah, and it was not appropriate for that, no.
At all. No. We still think you're awesome. that was appropriate. Anyway, for me, I would just like to see those two statements added and then be done. And then, you know, that was an unusual thing that happened, it was a departure from what we would normally have done. So I think we have to say this is what was said, and then you just go back to doing 7 minutes. And then if someone else chooses to, like Nick used to say, be on their soapbox or whatever, then, you know, then we can talk about it next time.
Right, well, it's up to others to make a judgment on what
Right.
the minutes say, and not for us to put in a judgment.
Right.
And so,
Right, it
it's
should
just
be
a fact.
factual. Right, just a fact.
So typically, moving forward in the future, I just want to make clear on so we understand the expectation from the board. This is not what we would normally do. We wouldn't normally vote. Okay. So my recommendation is that we amend these right now and adopt as amended. So, I am hearing to add a bullet that Mr. Beerwagon referred to the Bear River as a low elevation drainage ditch. Right, Bear River. And second, and President Beerwagon did say this in response to a direct question from Director Peters, that he's in support of Centennial.
But I thought the context, and correct me, it's been a while since that conversation took place. I thought the context was that Director Beerwagon said that he's, you know, as he looks to run for reelection, he is running on a platform in support of Centennial Dam. That's what I remember.
It was but it was in a direct response to Director Peters asking if he is supporting Centennial.
I didn't ask that. He said he's running on that, and I said, what are you running, I said, can you clarify? He clarified that it was, and he clarified that it was Centennial. I didn't say, are you running on Centennial? I said, you're running on what? Can you clarify what you're talking about?
Okay, so we are gonna reference.
Correct. President Beerwagon, is that how you?
I don't even recall a dialogue on this.
There was, okay, so we're gonna add President Beerwagon referenced the Bear River as a low elevation drainage ditch, and President Beerwagon indicated that he is running on a platform in support of Centennial.
Right.
And that's correct.
Yeah,
That's correct. That's right.
for the record, this is not really appropriate in minutes, but based off of board direction, we're gonna, okay.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
departure all the way around, right?
So I think then, if the board desires, somebody can make a motion reflecting the amendments that I just stated, and then we can move on from this issue.
I would so move to approve those minutes amended as you just stated, with those two bullets added, and then return to our policy of summary minutes.
We have a second? Any further discussion by the board?
Oh, I have one more topic on that. And so on the summary minutes, on the third bullet, on the second page, it says, was told by the previous general manager that there's enough water in a dry year to fill Centennial Reservoir and 6 times that in a wet year. And, the former general manager told all of us that, I mean, told Ricky, and he told me they've done a water supply assessment, a water supply availability study, and that's where he got this information. So, this proves that there has been work done on that Bear River to determine the hydrology, $2.6 million of work done on it, and so I just wanted to just get on my soapbox on that one, so I'm good.
Okay.
That's not going in the minutes.
That's not going in the minutes, but noted.
But noted, I mean, it's, to me, it's all about transparency, and this shows, and this is transparent, it shows that we know what the hydrology is.
Some, no.
Some people know, I mean, the board doesn't know, but.
Any further board discussion? Dr. Johansson, you haven't weighed in yet?
Stay out of this one.
Okay. Any member of the public like to comment on this, item, correcting the minutes? Turn on your phone or come to the podium. Okay, Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, Director Peters, item 3C.
3C, 3100. Oh, okay, ad hoc committee discussion, the resolution, the second whereas in the resolution, it says, whereas at the discretion of the board of directors, ad hoc committees may be formed to address specific issues within the purview of district business. And I'd like clarification of what exactly is the purview of district business that requires the board's involvement.
I would think it's written broadly so that we have a lot of flexibility, but that would be my guess.
And I would think this would be within the context of policy 5040, the board actions and decisions. So I kind of.
Put the two together.
Yeah.
That might put both of them.
Yeah.
Because it seems, the president of the board is the one that determines the ad hoc committees, is my understanding. And so we always had, any time that, we met with the organized group, like, we had an agricultural subcommittee, ad hoc committee.
Right.
It was a branch of the rate committee. Well, now we've been told that the board can't be involved in meetings with the agricultural community because it's too political. And so now we can't meet with the ag community on rates. And then we had a discussion when we were, for the technical expertise of the plan for water process, there was gonna be a group get together with representative groups of the contractors and the environmental groups and the, third one. Who's the third one?
I'm not sure what you're referencing.
So it's the other groups that show, so the general manager's meeting with organized groups, and there's no board members present, but the people that are making the decisions are not benefiting from discussions with the people. There's a go-between. And I think that the purview, I think that the agricultural subcommittee is on the purview of district business, but I think the board should have an ad hoc committee on. I think the board should be present when staff is meeting with organized groups of people to get their input on setting policy and setting how we're going to be running the district and setting how we're going to do rates in it. But there's no board members present, and so we hear it secondhand, like telephone, we hear it secondhand, and to me, that's disturbing, and it's a philosophical difference I think I have with this board, so.
Well, if I could jump in, if you use the word can't twice, this board can do what it pleases in this realm, okay? So, as a board, but not as a single board member.
I'm talking about ad hoc committee.
I know, an ad hoc committee would be a discussion by the board for the necessity of an ad hoc committee, or allowing the staff to collect data, that's what they're doing, and then come back. So we have the latitude to do that. We can, if you want to make a motion at some time, not now, we're talking about the policy, we're not talking about direction, but if the board deemed this issue was warranted, having board members on it, or having an ad hoc committee, then the board could vote to do that. That's the, when you read the ad hoc, the whole policy, that's what it says in there, and it allows latitude both for open meetings and closed meetings besides. So, I think there's plenty of flexibility. It's not, we can't do that. We haven't been told we can't do that. That's not true. So.
Well, I just think that, I think it's a slippery slope we're on, and I'm opposed to it, but, and that, the other thing I wanted to mention on this, on this 5300, on the policy, 5300.4, it says, as meetings will be open as determined by the board president and/or the general manager. So I would strike the or and, I don't know why the and or. I think that the board should determine whether there should be public participation. It's our meetings, we're the decision makers.
Well, the context for that, as I recall, is that there are, a lot of issues that have legal implications, and that our legal counsel and general manager are in the best position to understand the risks associated with opening ad hoc committee meetings. So that's the and/or
Oh,
is
it could
that.
be and the president, they can talk to the president and let the president know that. I don't know, that's a small, if you guys think are, and it doesn't matter, but, then the next thing, I still, Michael Hillswell was on, he's not on today, but last week, I think just like closed session meetings, if we're gonna have an ad hoc meeting, we should notice it and say it's like a closed session, that staff is meeting this ad hoc committee is meeting, and it's closed, it's a confidential item. But people should know that we're doing it. I don't see the problem with that.
Director Peters, we already discussed all of this, and that's why we have a final to vote on today.
Well, they were gonna revise it and bring it back.
Well, they did revise it. That's what my point is, we discussed all this, the board agreed to these changes. Unless the board wants to take up a new change.
No, we'll just vote. I'm okay, I just wanted to raise those two items. Make sure yeah, I think that, we should let people know when we're having ad hoc.
I just think that, you know, when you have, I don't personally feel it's necessary. You know, I get the importance of transparency and fully support that. But if you know, let's say you're meeting on a closed session item, and you have no context, you have no access to it, it's like, and? How do we ever know about this? I mean, there's no context, there's no follow-up, there's no, meaning behind it. And so all it is staff work to provide a notice, and to me, if you don't have some kind of a follow-up and some kind of ability to hear the context, then it's just staff time, and it doesn't yield any greater transparency, because there's no information behind it.
So can we delete the closed session? Just not let them know when we go in closed session either? And what this closed session item?
That's a Brown Act requirement.
Brown Act requirement, we can't do that.
So ad hoc committees aren't subject to the Brown Act?
They're not.
Correct.
That's correct. That's what we discussed the last
Yeah.
time. Director Johansson.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the way this is written. And as far as access to different groups, that's our job, to get out and build relationships with the ag group independently, the environmental group. Saturday, Tracy Sheehan and I had a great time just talking about life and different items, and we're gonna continue that. I think it's incumbent on us to reach out and then let people know what's going on. That's our job.
It is our job, but when I find out what's going on in the district from people that are not, they're telling me what's going on in the district without us knowing what's going on in the district.
From an ad hoc committee, though, I mean, you have to delineate what you're, I hear that too. I have some of those issues, like, oh, I heard NID did blah, blah, blah. But in an ad hoc committee, you wouldn't necessarily hear that. So I'm asking you to delineate when you hear from other people versus hear it from an ad hoc.
What do you mean from they're participating in an ad hoc meeting? It's on the.
No, because an ad hoc, by definition, is two board members.
Right.
And
Oh,
so,
right, they're participating, I mean, that I believe
Staff.
board members and
Well,
reporting out.
when staff collects some people to collect information.
yeah, they're
from an
collecting
ad hoc committee.
information.
Ad hoc
Which is
committee
ad
is
hoc.
two members
Yeah.
that meet.
The board should, I think the board should hear the information directly. At least two members of the board should hear that information, should be educated. That's my
I
personal
wonder
opinion.
if we could agendize this at some point, because I do think there is value in talking about it as a board.
Mhm.
Where do we want to be engaged in an ad hoc committee format to have these conversations? On the other hand, I really support our general manager in the outreach she's doing on a regular
Yes.
basis with these groups, so I don't want to
Hear, hear.
interfere with that. But on the other hand, I do think that it's really informative as a board member to hear these conversations. But I think it's more appropriate that we take it outside the context of this.
Like maybe in a general
policy.
manager's report or something? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I
Or
feel
that we say, as a board, we'd like to have, an ad hoc committees on X or Y, just as Chris
Okay.
said. But that's absent of this, or independent of this policy, and certainly independent of, Jennifer's ongoing outreach efforts.
And I'll restate, this allows all the flexibility in the world for us to do
Yeah, it does.
on a case-specific basis. Like, we want to say ag committee, for instance, ag input, for instance, if we want to have more engagement with the ag community, we can do that. And this has not limited us, or just,
Right.
you know, this is not limiting us. I think there's plenty of flexibility in here to do all those things. And take it, they'll all be on ad hoc committees will all be on a case-by-case basis, as the one that we just started is. Very specific. So,
Okay.
I'm very comfortable with being able to do that under this, policy.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve, item 3C on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any for discussion? Any member of the public like to comment, step to the podium or start on your phone on, new policy for ad hoc committees. Discussion. Okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Yes, Division 4,
I'm not gonna pass, I'm gonna vote no.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you. I bring to you, 3D.
Okay, this is on the, board actions and decisions. My first question is, what's the difference between oversight in bullet 1 and high-level oversight in bullets 1, 2, 3, 5? The third one up. But what do we talk about by oversight? Oversight of implementation, high-level oversight of implementation. What does that mean?
To me, high-level oversight means that we're not in the day-to-day, implementation, you know, kind of I'm using the same word. Let's see, I have to think of different words. We provide, the goal is to ensure that the district's mission, vision, and strategic priorities are being achieved. And that ensurance that they are being achieved is accomplished through high-level oversight, not, kind of, day-to-day operations of how they're achieving goals.
Would you say, we would discuss that at a board meeting?
Correct,
High-level oversight, we discuss it at a board meeting.
yes.
Oh, there we go.
And I would expect that, you know, we're getting, on these priorities, we're getting regular, periodic updates as to how things are going relative to achievement of the goals.
Well, so far, okay. Well, so when, the way that other policy was written before we struck it out was that we can look at contracting, we can oversee the hiring and employment processes. We all took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the State of California and the Constitution of the United States of America. And that means upholding the laws of the state, which are employment laws, contracting laws. There's all kinds of laws that we're elected by the public in their trust to ensure that the laws and everything in the Constitution is being upheld. That was our oath. And, but we struck out that we can look at contracts. We struck out that we can provide oversight of employment. And so we know that there's at-will contracts. The general manager has written at-will contracts with all of our department heads. And this board has never seen that contract. We've never approved the template. We usually approve contract template forms, but this is a private contract between the general manager and her managers. And the board has no idea what's in that contract. And then we snuck in these two levels performance-based raises, these two extra salary steps for the managers, without even mentioning it in the staff report, ever saying a word about it. And we don't know what the performance measures are. We don't know what that is. And so I understand that this board is not interested in knowing, but it appears that they're not interested. And from my perspective, I brought this up many times, and they said that's out of our purview. And that's why we're striking these from this policy, is because we don't want to have high-level, well, I call it high-level oversight. To look at we have a HR policy that says recruitment and hiring practices. Was that followed? Adoption or rejection of policies and regulations. Well, we have these policies, but we don't have any way to oversee them, except for saying we have high-level oversight.
You know, in a lot of ways, you're right, Laura. We don't have a way to know that things are being followed. That's because we can't know at an operational level. I mean, I was a high-level manager, and when I met with my senior managers, they asked me, Karen, are you complying with XYZ laws and regulations? And I, in my position, said yes. Or I said, no, we have a problem here. But that is similar to where we are here. We can't know. How would we know if HR practices were followed? Oh, I've audited many hiring practices.
But that's not
our job.
That is, we're here to uphold the laws. That is our job.
No.
We hire staff to do that
That's
on
right.
our behalf, and we look at the greater policy.
That's right.
And, you know, I'm here to tell you, if our general manager was not following the law, we would hear about it pretty quickly.
How?
And we would deal with it.
How?
Well,
How
there's
would
a
we
lot of
know?
ways.
How? I just wanted to find oversight, so let's get back to my,
But I do think another point that you raised is important to clarify. We haven't struck our responsibilities for oversight in contracts.
yes, we did. We
No,
struck it out.
we have that in the contracting and purchasing policy, and it's very clearly defined there. What we're trying to do is create a policy system in which everything isn't cross-referencing everything else, and then when you make a change over here, it trickles down into 6 other policies. So from a policy person background, this makes complete sense. But we haven't struck our responsibility for upholding or approving certain contracting levels. And that's just false, and I want that stated for the record. So,
Director Johansson?
Yeah, Director Peters, I have 2 questions. Are you having trust issues, the way things are being operated? And number 2, what's the end goal?
Yeah.
What is your end goal? I see us doing our job. I think 4 other directors see it. But I'm not quite sure what
Okay.
we're trying to get at, except get into the weeds of places that we hire a manager and the management team is to do, and I thought I know they're doing a great job.
Well, we're supposed to, on policy, policy is that? One of the policies, it says that, on a quarterly basis, reserves shall be reported, it's policy 3040, reserves shall be reported and analyzed along with the district's adopted budget, portfolio investment, short-term forecasting, and budget versus actual reports. We haven't seen a budget versus actual report since the 3rd quarter of 2021.
That's not true. That's not
The
true.
last one was in January, and it was for the 3rd quarter of
But
2021.
Jennifer should answer.
Yeah, so that is just simply a function of our larger cleanup effort right now. And so I do have a draft version of the final, we're just behind because we're doing a large cleanup. We're moving over financial systems. We're dealing with the banking issues. It's just simply being behind.
So in my view, the big oversight view on this is that it's being cleaned up. We're getting a new reporting system that will be more in real time. We'll be able to make real decisions based on that. And is that worth waiting an extra month or so? Yeah.
For 6 months.
Because otherwise, it's kind of, wait a minute, otherwise it's kind of garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, so I also think you need to understand that the 4th quarter of financials, they're always delayed because you have to make your year-end accruals after the end of the fiscal year-end, and you also have to process all the lasting invoices. So that is always later than it normally is. What we're gonna be presenting is going to be unaudited financials. Your actual fourth quarter financials really is your annual financial audit. But unfortunately, the finances, probably, you know, due to some lack of oversight on the management level, are fairly messy. And so we've been having to do a whole lot of cleanup.
And we've been hearing this now
Yeah.
for months.
And we added the new funds, we have a new cost allocation, we have the new capital fund. It is, and it always, you know, it's like when you clean out a huge messy closet, it's a big giant mess till you get it all sorted back out. So we're still in the sorting
That
process.
is transparent as you can get.
Mhm.
So there was a bullet that was added this week that was not last week. Any other action dictated to be completed by the board through policy or state law? Examples include contract authority. What does that mean, contract authority?
It's referencing the procurement policy.
Procurement policy.
Yeah, this
I think we added this last
Yeah,
time.
the board added this bullet.
All of these things we talked about last.
You did talk about that one last time, yeah.
Okay. And we still haven't seen, so we've got to bring that procurement policy. That's been,
I've just got to restate, I thank you for the job the managers are doing. It's, times it's not easy.
I just want to be as transparent and as possible, and I feel like this is taking away board authority, and I'm personally.
I really disagree, Laura. I think this just defines in a real clean way, and then we have other policies behind it, like the procurement and the contracting policy and all those things, that then it all works kind of, you know, like hand in glove. I don't think this policy as a standalone takes anything away. I think it just defines it more clearly.
So I'm going to move. I'm going to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-25, updates to district policy 5040, board actions and decisions.
Thank you. I'll second.
Any further board discussion? Any member of the public like to comment on this item? New district, amended district policy 5050, star 9 your phone or step up to the podium. Okay, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 4,
No.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. All right, general orders 4A, Watershed, there we go, Department Department Budget Adjustment and Contract Approval. Greg. Good morning, Greg.
Nathan.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm going to bring NASA up as well. If we have any particular questions. Morning, NASA.
Good morning.
I
know.
As soon as it warms up a bit.
July, August, all right.
So, good morning, board, members of the public, staff. Today we're here to bring forth to you a resolution 22-26. This resolution is to amend the Watershed Department budget in a couple ways to bring in about $250,000 from two different funds. As we talked about, we're going through different funds processes, so we had to sort of figure out how this one was going to work, and it took a minute to bring this forth. But we're bringing $125,000 from Fund 10 and from Fund 50, into the Fund 70 in order to bring the budget of the watershed budget up to a level where we can contract for the full project work of the English Meadow Restoration Project, as well as today to ask the board to approve the contract expenses for contracting for the firms. So as a quick background, in October of 2021, we received a grant total of $1.251 million from the Wildlife Conservation Board to carry out the English Meadow Restoration Project, which we've been working on for roughly 4 years-ish at this point. And so we're very thankful, and big kudos to NASA and her team for putting that together. It is a complicated project. We anticipated when we budgeted in October, November of last year that this project would be over a 2-year period, so that's why we only budgeted less amount than what we're asking for today, so we're asking for the increased amount. to bring that forth. As we prepared a bid, so we sent this project out to bid to, I think, 11 different firms, and we received responses from 5. When we received those responses, it was apparent to the project manager, NASA, and her team that we can do this work in a 1-year period. And in thinking about it, it's pretty complicated. There's 4 different elements to the project, and you see them in the staff report there: river restoration, slope fuel mitigation and reduction, material stockpiling, tree felling, and then access to a road that we need to open up and create. So that bid brought 5 different firms together. Of those firms, we recognize that we can actually combine this project and really accentuate the time that it takes by utilizing the skills of 2 particular contractors who've chosen to award the full bids to. And we get it done in 1 season. This is a faraway location. It would roughly take, how many, 2.5 hours?
3 hours from where we sit
Yeah.
to get there.
3 hours to get there. Mobilizing and 3 hours back. Mobilizing a project in the high alpine environment as this is. It is under snow currently, and it will be hopefully under snow come October. So we are on a short window of time. The idea is to move all equipment up, get in and get out as quick as possible. So that's why we're here today, to bring this whole project forward. The other half of this is to actually have the board accept the revenue increase of the full $1.25 million into the budget for this year. So we're asking for the budget transfer of $125,000 from Fund 10 and another $125,000 from Fund 50 to Fund 70. We've chosen those, and we did not choose the rec fund. And that was really on an effort of analyzing the project and analyzing the benefits of the watershed, and the overall meadow restoration really landed in the water operations and the hydroelectric divisions, not necessarily the rec. So that's what this is. It's to approve these 2 contracts to Frank Dial Logging and to Black Dog Enterprises in the amount stated in the board packet, as well as to increase the revenues by $2.51 million into the 2022 budget. And if you have particular questions about the project, NASA is our expert.
Great project. Particular questions? Director Peters.
I think it's a great project too. Thank you so much, Nathan, for your work on it. Confused about the numbers though. I added up, so we got one. Did we receive the check from Wildlife Conservation Board? Do we have that?
It's a reimbursable grant.
Okay, there we go.
As with many of them, once we incur expenses on a regular periodicity, shall we say, so quarterly, bi-monthly, however we decide to submit a request for reimbursement, we have to provide all of our documentation for expenses incurred by the district and paid out.
I see.
So it's a
That's why we need
reimbursable.
the additional to front that money until it's
Yep.
paid.
That's right.
Yeah, because it's only, the difference between the 1.21 and the 1.42 is only, 169,000, we're asking for 250. So just to make the cash flow work.
Well, what you didn't add in there is we have a number of other smaller contracts for a biologist, a forester, tribal monitor, exactly. So that makes up the difference. Yeah, and those were under the general manager's authorization. So those are just included in the overall project budget, but it's not reflected in today's action. And, yeah.
All right.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Comments, questions? Is Dial our full-time logger?
Yeah, maybe
Do you have any other jobs?
I hope not during those 2 months. And it's, and that is his title, is Frank Dial Logging. The majority of what he'll be doing is moving things around. He'll be reopening this road that goes across the Forest Service that we've got permission to open for access during the project, then we'll close out. He's gonna be We will be using on-site materials, the trees, the shrubs, the rocks, the gravel bars. There are extensive gravel bars within the Middle Yuba River up in that area. We'll be using on-site stuff, so he'll be pushing them around. So yes, he will be pretty busy up there.
Well, I didn't imply he was logging them,
Yeah, yeah.
make it clear.
Yeah.
He just, his name keeps coming up in.
He's proven that, his organization, his small firm has proven to be very adept at a lot of the specific, tree felling and hazard tree removal work that happens at district facilities. And through recreation, through operations, through maintenance, through he has been very adept and skilled at that particular operation so as to not to, damage or harm many of district facilities, that continuously have trees growing and dying around them.
So it's the best of both worlds, good work and low bidder.
That's
Right, it worked out, our bids worked out very well. We were very happy.
So, ready for a motion?
I'm ready for motion.
I move that we adopt resolution 2022-26, English Meadow Restoration Project Budget Amendment and Contract Expense Approval, approve the project contract expense, and authorize the general manager to execute the necessary.
Second.
Any further board discussion?
Yep, just wonderful project, thank
Yeah,
you.
wonderful project.
Does the public like to comment at this time, start on your phone on this project, Watershed Development? Start on your phone or step to the podium. All right, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you, Nessa. Look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, this would be a good season perhaps to get up there later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And once we have a road open, right now you have to, walk in,
Snowshoes.
or
Yeah, no,
snowshoe in, or, yeah,
No, I've been closed
or fly in,
in the middle of summer.
yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful,
Okay.
thank you.
Next item, off-season water services, Chip. Good morning, Chip. Morning.
So welcoming. Good morning, board, staff, and public. Today, I have for you an informational item only, but it is to discuss the water services offered by NID during the off-season, essentially known to us as winter water. We brought this forward because in past discussions, we had brought up the topic of constructed conveyance, and it brought up a lot of questions, and really good questions. Can be a confusing topic. So I thought of this as an opportunity to just review all the options we offer to our customers in the winter months. And so with that, I have a little slideshow that we can walk through here and describe what we offer. First off, we'll talk about the two main water season services. Everybody's familiar with these. We offer the summer irrigation service, April 15th through October 14th. Our off-season services are October 15th through April 14th. So just swap those, summer versus winter. And then the services that we will cover are annual raw water services, constructed conveyance services, fall and stock water service, and winter water service. We'll start with annual raw water service, and it's defined in our rules and regulations as deliveries made year-round at a rate of flow that may differ between irrigation season and winter season. Now, this is kind of a relic from a time when NID didn't have treated drinking water, distribution pipes, all of that, and people used our water not only to irrigate their pastures, but also to use the water in the home. And so it was not uncommon that people bought this water year-round, and we had the category for them to pay for it monthly, and things went on their merry way. That changed as NID and branched out, and regulations on drinking waters in homes changed, and this service then changed and is no longer offered. However, the folks who are already on it are grandfathered in essentially, and we do still have 273 customers in this category, and they will remain in this category until the property changes hands or their service becomes delinquent and they have to cancel service. So again, this is an old service that we offered. It's no longer offered to new customers, but it still remains because of the grandfathering in.
Property becomes transferred,
What you sell.
You sell, yeah.
it doesn't go with the land.
It doesn't go with the land. If you sell, we will set you up as a summertime account and a winter water account.
Oh, so you can still use construction today?
You can still use water year-round. You'll just have to fit in the two buckets we currently offer, which is irrigation water and then winter water. And we'll get into that as we get into the winter water offering. Just a different format, and the way we bill it is very different. It's going by the wayside slowly but surely through attrition.
Is there a yearly cost associated with it?
So the cost is the same as if you were buying summer and winter. We take the fixed fee for summer, the fixed fee for winter, add them all together along with the consumptive amount you're purchasing, and then divide it over the monthly fee and bill you monthly.
And does that cover our costs?
Yes, yes. Based on the cost of service study, yes.
Okay.
Now it does, because we modified a lot.
Correct. I mean, there's still subsidies on our rates overall, but this is no different than the cost if you were to purchase these separately, summer versus winter. So that's just spread out over a year.
And they can choose, they can pick, they can 1 inch or 2 inch or 5 inch, they can get as much, the same as this dollar.
Yes, that is open based on the canal, but you're gonna find that most of these people in this category have an irrigation purchase amount during the summer, which makes total sense, but in the wintertime, most of them are a very, very small amount, and it's just for in-home usage. And in fact, you'll see when we went through the fee study that there's only like 4 or 5 categories of annual winter service allotments, because that's all that's left. And I think it only goes up to maybe 1 inch is maybe the biggest purchaser. So, again,
Change the plate.
that's what we do. So you'll see some of our water boxes have a plate in the top that's out of the water and a plate in the bottom that's in the water. One is for summer, one is for winter, and when we hit that threshold, we just flip that board over and lock the box. So, simple as that. Okay, any other questions on that particular one? Okay, constructed conveyance, this is the big one. So constructed conveyance, the definition, I think, is where the helpfulness of understanding what this means comes in. So it means the delivering of water to include not only systems which provide water for human consumption through pipes, but also systems which provide water through other constructed conveyances, AKA a canal. Yeah, so what happened is in 1996, the Safe Drinking Water Act was modified, and it basically stated that any water agency that provides water to a home for human use had to be considered a public water system. Now, a public water system means you're providing full treatment for potable usage in the home. Well, as we know, NID's 500 miles of canals makes treatment at these remote locations very, very difficult. Definitely not feasible for us to put treatment plants out at these remote locations. So we studied other alternatives, and one of them was point-of-use systems, where we could provide treatment at the irrigation box moving towards the house. What we found with that is, A, there were no certified point-of-use systems that were authorized by the state, and 2, the state required a certified treatment plant operator to run those facilities, and we couldn't ask that of our customer base. But we also didn't want to leave these folks high and dry, so we came up with, I think, a very good solution at that point in time, is that we now ask any customer that is receiving winter water from NID, canal water, that they must self-certify that they have some other means of using potable water in the house, some other supply. Most of our winter customers, you're gonna see when we get to the maps, are provided well water as their drinking water supply. But there is a handful of people, specifically 119, that didn't have any other means for potable water in their house. So the solution under the new constructed conveyance law was that they have to provide proof to NID that they're paying for commercial bottled water service to their house. And so that's what these folks do. They have a contract with Alhambra or other bottled water haulers that are providing us the receipts for the purchases of the water at these locations, and then we continue to provide them canal water. So essentially, a constructed conveyance account is an account that's using bottled water to continue to be able to use canal water in the home. That's in its simplest terms. So hopefully that clears up some of the confusion about what that particular category means. So let's see, did I cover all this properly? Got potable use, yes, service?
I have a question.
Yes.
For the annual water service, there's 154, it sounds like if there's 119 constructed conveyances, there's 270, so there's 154 that are just winter and summer water users that get to pay monthly instead of.
Bill, thanks for bringing that up. They are intermixed. So there is the potential for somebody who is on an annual water service to also be classified as constructed conveyance. They can be part of both. There are also some winter water services that we haven't got to yet that are also constructed conveyance. So at the end of my staff report, I gave a total, a breakdown of what the numbers are.
Yeah.
So you can see what they are, but constructed conveyance can overlap any one of these. It really, constructed conveyance, all it means is that you have to provide proof to NID that you have a bottled water hauler providing you potable water. That's all it means, in the simplest form. And this is no longer offered to new customers either. If you don't have any other means of providing water to the house or the property, we can't offer this anymore. It's basically a violation of the law, and we really don't want to encourage folks to rely on bottled water haulers. And it takes a lot of staff time to manage this thing.
I would imagine. Yeah. On the annual water service, are these just really old accounts, or how?
Yes. Yes.
Did they used to be constructed conveyances and then they got a well or something?
The majority of the annual water service accounts predated the constructed conveyance change. So that happened in 1996. Most of these annual water services were well before that. Like I said, our treatment facilities were built in late 1960s. So most of these annual water services are even going to predate that.
So when they people had a house out in the country, didn't necessarily buy irrigation water, that had availability of ditch water,
Exactly, yes.
hook up their house.
Yes, and even in Grass Valley,
Yeah.
there was a time when we would just throw some chlorine in the canal and put it right into the home. That's just what we did. That's what was available at that point in time, and that was an annual water service. Times have changed. We now have fully treated potable water going to the homes, and this particular service is not needed anymore.
And if these homes change hands or to sell, so obviously these 154 homes have not sold as the same original owners, or do they stay with that?
No, they stay with the home.
property?
So as long as they can continue to certify they have some alternative means of potable water, they can continue on. It's not until they drop service or they become delinquent that we take them out of this program and then offer them summer and winter water individually.
So to clarify, if property is sold, the new owner has access to this program?
Yes, they have to, we will send them a self-certification and notify them of the program they're in and ask them if they have an alternative water supply, and please certify that you do, and then they can continue in the program.
Why do we,
Keep this one going. That's my question.
why do we do that? Why don't we, when we
Yeah.
transfer ownership, why don't the new owner has to find an alternative water source? Just as you commented that you don't want to have new customers in this program
Yeah.
because of the cost and
How you phase them out.
So
yeah,
that's
phase them out.
it's a great question, and I think from staff's perspective, we'd love to just phase them out that way. But what you're gonna find is that many of these locations are in this program because they simply have no other means. They can't drill a well, there's just not an ample groundwater supply, there's no treatment close or nearby. They already have a structure built at home that they're living in, and they have no other means other than maybe hauling water from a tanker, but that is super expensive. So this is really their last avenue. So it would create hardships for many folks if we eliminated the program altogether.
Chip, how many of them have a well?
But, so, it depends on which one we're talking about. So, again, constructed conveyance don't have a well. This is simply folks that use bottled water in the home, and there's 119 of those customers. The rest of our customers, let me get to that number. So the rest of our winter canal services, the 500 or 861, have some other means of potable water. So 861 minus the 119 is your balance of folks that have some other water supply.
We can't, the state, first off, this is rules and regs on our part.
Yeah.
About that. Constructive conveyance. The state hasn't come down on this, but they also won't allow an exemption for some at-home treatment type deal, right? So that's why we're stuck with this.
That's correct.
Okay. And this is why the backbone extension program was,
I was wondering when that was coming.
How many does that take out?
Jeff, I have a question following up on Karen, because I'm still confused between, so there's 119, excuse me, customers that don't have a well and don't have access to any other water.
Yes.
But there's another 154, you say 273 minus 119, there's another 154 annual water service customers that are not constructed conveyances, that are just annual water services from this legacy way, I guess we used to charge them.
Okay.
for
Okay.
water.
Okay.
And you're saying those annual water services, they get the option when the property sells, they get the option to keep it monthly billing and annual water services.
Correct.
But you were, if they don't have water in their home, but only 119.
No, so
Don't have
annual, so again, these can be mixed, but annual water service means you're using canal water, most likely in the home. It doesn't always have to be that way, but that's generally the case. Of those, the 119 we referenced as constructed conveyance have no other means of water other than hauled water by a potable water company like Alhambra. The rest have either a well, a spring, or some other means in which they're getting drinking water in the home.
The other 154 annual water people.
Sure.
So I don't understand why we couldn't phase those out when the property sells. Why do those, I mean, I can clearly see for the 119 that have no other option, but if they have another source of water and they're getting the luxury of paying monthly when everyone else has to, raw water within 3 payments, I guess, am I missing something?
I mean, it's just the way we have done it. That doesn't mean we couldn't change it and phase it out. I think it would be an inconvenience to these folks who are used to paying the monthly fee. It's just, this is their form of water service, and they're used to paying this way. That's, and there was no point in changing it, and we just thought that through attrition, it would go away, and it has. I mean, this used to be a much larger number.
Over to the next owner, right?
Well,
It perpetuates it.
Yes, but what you're gonna find is eventually, I mean, through attrition, it does whittle it down. But, I mean, if the board's prerogative is to eliminate this type of service, we can go down that path too.
What would be the upside and downside of eliminating?
You know, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I do believe that we're going to look at alternative ways for billing irrigation water in the future when we move to a new accounting software program. And I think that would be an appropriate time to revisit this type of discussion on how and how often we bill our irrigation customers.
It seems like to me, the bigger issue is what it costs to wet our canals during the winter, and that, you know, I completely understand that 118 property owners are counting on that service. But we have the revenue here for the, individuals who have annual water. I just don't know, what does that compare to in terms of the expenses to manage the program, and how much water is deployed in this way, and how much water is, you know, it's kind of that cost of wetting canals for providing water way down the path. It seems to me that this is a great starting point for our conversation. I really appreciate that. It just seems that we'll be making choices about some very significant investments in our infrastructure, and that understanding this use of water is put in perspective when we're talking about having to invest in infrastructure to create more capacity. So anyway, I think that this is a great starting point for the conversation, but I have a lot more questions about the context of how it impacts decisions.
Yeah, and they are great questions, and as we move through the slides, I have some more that we can add to some of those answers to some of those questions. But yes, wintertime service, providing that to our customer base is very, very difficult from a staff level due to just Mother Nature. And the fact that we get these massive storms in the middle of winter, we have to gut the canals, and then as soon as the storm's over, put everything all back together again. So it is very labor intensive, comes at a much higher cost, but that's also reflected in the fee that we charge. Our base rate is much higher for winter water use than it is summer.
Yeah.
For that purpose.
Yeah.
Director Johansson?
And none of this winter water is coming out of storage.
That's not true. So depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
As soon as the irrigation season's done on, October 14th, it's usually dry. And it usually continues to be dry, usually until November, December, and during that time period, we are directly pulling from storage to supply
I
these
saw
customers.
we sold something close to 40,000 acre feet, 25,000 in Placer County, 15,000 in Nevada County.
Yeah, that gets difficult. So the overall sales, in other words, the amount that we have billed for is right around 8,000 acre feet.
Right.
However, we diverted a much, much higher number than that to get it into the canals. And the challenge in the winter months is getting it to those folks without flooding others. So we have a lot of cross checks and spillways going on. So we're diverting a much higher amount than is needed for the total that has been purchased.
Correct.
Additionally, we're sending it down miles of canals that it's being absorbed or lost or evaporated. So yes, we divert a lot more than we actually have for purchase.
And that water is becoming more and more valuable, and as the drought continues or the summer irrigation season expands to 8 months, we're gonna have to probably take that into account. So, we got some heavy-duty issues, because I'm not one to abandon these people who are, getting water from us, and it's a lifeline. On the other hand, I'll just throw it out there, and I will say, I'm not willing to go into the water tender business of supplying these 119 people, but there could be a contract to somebody, and it might be cheaper.
Yeah.
Well, and we might provide incentives for these people to get, to install large storage tanks. That's what I have on part of our property. And 2,500 gallons lasts a good long time,
Yeah. A lot cheaper than 40,000.
So that's a great point, and we notify every customer we have that we strongly encourage them to put in a storage tank, especially if you'd like winter water service, because during storm events, the canal is going to be low or go dry as the storms move through. Additionally, that's when we do our maintenance. And so you are subject to, substantial outages while we're cleaning the canal. And so you're gonna need some backup storage or some other backup water supply.
So this sounds like something for Karen to fold into her proposal she made at the last meeting about, this, looking at the whole big picture. This folds right into that conversation. And it really is, looking at the whole big picture from a bigger analysis than I can do.
Are you looking at a workshop?
No, what did you propose? What did you say?
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't, okay. Well, it was very well said, I know that.
But
About
I
how
do,
we look,
yeah,
yeah.
But I think this is a workshop,
This is a
personally,
workshop.
because we need to get input from the 119, and other people,
Right.
because as wells go dry, and as we supply water, that's our job.
That's right.
So we need to figure out how to do it not at our expense, but to do it as reasonably as we can, and people have the guarantee of getting water. And I think this system is antiquated, it can't allow, I don't think the state's gonna allow it for much longer. It's not sustainable. So we need to look at solutions and, get the public involved.
I wonder if the context, though, is within the plan for water of understanding our infrastructure, the supply and demand side of it too, because I think looking at this program in isolation doesn't take into context the implications of the program. So I agree with you, further conversation, but I'd like to see a broader context of the supply and demand side, and, because we're not gonna offer the program to people whose wells go dry, right? We said no new people, so therefore we have we have to develop a program that can support what you're saying. As wells go dry, how can we help people strategize on what solutions exist?
Have solutions,
Yeah.
and then fit the program.
Okay, I got a few more slides. I'll try to motor through them here. Let's say, so, fall stock water service. So this, in our water service rules and regulations, is a service that's available during the period from October 15th through December 1st. So this covers folks during that shoulder season that we just talked about, when irrigation season's over, but it's still dry, we haven't had any rain. And so we offer this service to cover that little dry spell. I will say that in the past, this has not been a very popular service. However, whether it be climate change or drought or whatever's going on in our world right now, this has become very popular. In 2015, we only had 14 of these accounts. In 2020, there were 137. Last year, there were 0, though, because we had drought. And one of the things in our rules and regulations states that this is not a guarantee of service and is secondary to seasonal or demand water, and because we had limited supplies, we did not offer this last year.
Yet the demand was off the charts.
It was, and I will tell you though, because it rained October 25th,
Yeah,
it became a moot point.
Right.
at that point.
And we didn't hear a lot of complaining after that, so that was good.
So, and this does go into the plan for water. And in agriculture, there is a need for an expanded irrigation season. 6 months isn't making it anymore. And looking at that, that will increase the demand for our water. So that's where it goes into the plan for water. But also, it is serving a need, a desperate need, in the agricultural community. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that, and it could be something flexible like that. We'll go from October 15th to November 15th, but if the rain comes in.
Sure. I can tell you the other common request we get for this service is for fire protection.
Yep.
That's what most of our customers
Two years ago.
are asking for.
And is that a beneficial use?
And that becomes the challenge.
Chip, I'm curious if you could speak for a second about, there were 14 accounts in 2015 and then 137. Was that climate-driven, fire-driven? Do we charge more for this, I think of it as shoulder season, but, fall water service, is that a greater expense?
I believe it was a combination of all of those things. In addition, word got out. I don't think most people knew we offered this type of service, and now word is out, and so people are on board, and we get a lot of requests for it.
Yeah, I was one of those. I made the statement that back in the day, the district just left the water on when it was dry. They turned it on early if it was dry in the spring. I didn't know about fall water service and found out, and then, yes, the bill was steep.
Yes.
So is fall water available this year?
Well, we haven't come back with our drought resolution yet. Folks who have been asking for both winter and fall water, we have been taking their information down and letting them know the availability won't be determined until as late as September. We should have an answer before then, but we will be reaching out to all of those folks. If it's available, we'll reach out to them. If not, we will let them know that way too. So last year we did not.
Right. And is winter water, sorry, I'm missing if winter water is an option.
Winter water was locked last year due to drought. Basically, if you got it the previous years, you got it last year.
Drought.
We were headed down that path this year as well, however, things have changed, and I'll be talking about our water supply here coming up shortly, but, I think there is, opportunity for, limited services moving forward, but we'll get into those details at a later meeting.
And then once, my understanding is you can put your account on, like, inactive?
Yes,
Can you do that can you, let's say, buy winter water 1 year and then put your account on inactive?
yes, sure.
Director Hicks.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. So of these 137 accounts for this fall water, are those, I mean, I could see where you could have like 5 people over here and 10 people over here, and, you know, all over, and so you're wetting up these canals all over the place, as opposed to more centralized. And so that's part of the problem,
Yeah.
is that right?
Well, that's a great point.
So we don't
And-
get to centralize and say, oh, people on these canals are eligible because it's,
Well, you pointed out a bullet I should have included in the slide.
oh, okay.
So we only offer this services on canals that already provide winter water. So we will not wet up a dry canal just for fall water.
Okay.
We don't do that.
That's an important
Yes.
distinction to understand.
Again, a bullet I should have included. Thanks for bringing it up. Okay, last but not least is winter water service, and this is the one we're all more familiar with. Basically, it is the service offered from October 15th and ending April 14th, unless otherwise determined by the board. That's weird that language is in there, but essentially, I think it means during a drought year, we could probably modify this. But basically, this is the same situation in that customers must provide some proof of alternative drinking water supply in the home. As we just talked about, the shoulder seasons, the request for this type of water has increased. We provide service to roughly 588 accounts. This service is billed on the same schedule as seasonal service. So if you're historically a winter water purchaser, when we send you out your summer bill, you pay for both at that time, during those 3 installments.
Yeah.
So,
Chip, could you clarify, I get the blue and the red, but I don't understand the yellow on the
sure thing.
chart.
We'll finish up this slide. So 160, of the 100, here, we're right there, it's a great transition. Of the 161 NID canals, 91 offer the service. And just to give you a little perspective, I don't expect you to be able to read all these, but the blue color are canals in Nevada County that we offer winter service on. The red, we do not. The gold are limited. There's either restrictions on how we get the water to them, or it's just not feasible due to flooding potential in these areas. So they are just limited areas. And likewise, here's the same slide for Placer County. You can see there's quite a bit more canals in Placer County where this is offered. And then
So does limited mean they may or may not get water?
it means more than likely we won't offer it to anybody new.
Oh, anybody new?
Yeah. And as these dwindle away, we will probably try to get these canals off of the winter service.
How many miles of canals is 160, the 91?
That's a great question. I would have to look that up.
But it's got to be a lot.
Well, this will help give you a little perspective
Yes.
geographically on what we're talking about. So these slides, again, I apologize, there's a lot of information in a tiny space here, and it's hard to see what you're looking at. So I tried to circle each of these areas to represent, where this demand water is occurring. So we'll start left to right. You can see Rough and Ready Road. You'll see sort of a green shaded area. Those are folks that are using winter water but have a well. Okay, that's what the green shade means. You'll see some in there with the blue shaded with lines through it. Those are constructed conveyance parcels, and I apologize, those get very small, but there is a handful of them in this corridor, and as Rich had mentioned, this is the BEP corridor down towards Lake Wildwood, and that's one of the reasons why that location was picked, was to pick up those customers along the way. Just above that circle, you'll see the big red parcel. That is the Bitney Springs Charter School. They have their own treatment plant, so that's what that color represents. Moving north, you'll see Jones Bar area. There's a few large winter water customers there that also have a well. Moving to the top, you'll see Cement Hill area. Again, some of that green shaded area are well services. The blue area, without lines in it, indicate customers who get winter water from us, but also have treated water from us. And that changed due to the treated water extensions that occurred in, 2005 up in that area. So those used to be constructed conveyance parcels, not anymore, now they're on treated water. Moving further to the right, we have a group of these folks on the Highway 20 Willow Valley Dell Road area. The blue parcels in there are constructed conveyance, there's no other water up in there. Moving down, we have the Red Dog Pasquale area, again, same thing, this is all the blue shaded areas there are constructed conveyance. Moving south, Brunswick Woodrose area, again, all constructed conveyance in there with mixed in with a few well sites. Greenhorn access, a lot of wells, but also some constructed conveyance in there. And then the Dog Bar Rattlesnake area, same thing, most of that's wells.
Yes.
Yes.
Are the annual customers, are they grouped, or are they spread out all the way throughout?
This is all of it. This is all winter services, color coded based on what kind of service they have for potable use. So next slide shows you Nevada County South. And the first one we run into there is that Maranatha location, and those are the folks that came into our board
Right.
meetings looking for the DFWLE program. You can see all the blue shaded parcels in that area. Those are the folks that don't have any other means of water, so that's why they're desperate. Moving down, you see Golden Oaks. We have some winter water customers out in there. And then following basically down Highway 49, we move into the Highway 49 Rincon area. But basically, everything west of Highway 49 is very limited after that. And then this slide, I think, is kind of the most telling. You move into Placer County, and you can see there is just a lot of winter water service. All of those green shaded areas, although I didn't circle them all, are all winter water customers, most of them on wells. The ones that I did circle, the Mount Vernon Atwood Road area, we have quite a few winter water customers in there, but you'll notice they also have treated water. That's why they're shaded blue without lines. The China Wells area is constructed conveyance, because you can see they're shaded blue, but it has lines through it. So they're using canal water in the home, and bottled water.
Chip, in Placer County, how many, a lot of mangrove groves, 60 plus. Do we know how many of those are included in the winter water?
I do not. We can look that up. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
So tagging along with that question, are most of the uses then, where there is a well present and getting winter water, is that agricultural use?
Yes, yes. A lot of these folks continue to irrigate into the winter months and or stock water to water their livestock. So that's not uncommon at all in Placer County. And then the last area I circled is the Bald Hill area. I circled that area because there's quite a few constructed conveyance parcels in that area as well. So I think that just helps to highlight the area where there's folks that really truly have a need for our canal waters in the home. That was really what I was trying to point out and why I circled these specific areas. Really cool.
Do you think the state will eventually come out and require those 119 or whatever we have to do something different? And hopefully then there would be money behind it if there's a requirement that...
I think that's a great question. The state viewed what we did as acceptable and really hasn't challenged us since. And in fact, PCWA copied our program, and it offers the same thing down there. But where this becomes challenging is when things go on the market for sale. It's very hard to sell a house if you say your only potable water is hauled Alhambra water, and the county usually steps in at that point and will require something else.
I was wondering if the county overpaid any of this.
Yeah, yeah. As far as a sale transaction, they're not gonna allow a loan on a house without a potable water supply.
Yeah, the lenders won't.
Yeah, exactly. So that becomes one of the challenges. And that's another reason why the program is rapidly going away, because as those parcels change hands to new owners, they're usually finding some other supply of water. Whether that means they actually finally drilled a well that worked, or went down some other avenue, that's great, but hopefully those numbers continue to drop.
So the town of Orland went out and got about $8 million, and that whole region, and they're hooking up people who've lost their wells. The state, funded that. I don't know, we have the bandwidth to go after that kind of money and then help these people set up tanks or, you know, in a connection to a water tender, but, if there is money for that, I know potable water in California is getting to be scarce and expensive, so if there's money for that, I wonder who could look into that? Would that be a county thing, or?
Well, in the past, we have applied for state revolving funds to do water line extensions in these areas. Many of the water line extensions that NID did in the past were specifically to supply treated drinking water to these areas with the highest concentration of constructed conveyance. We've picked off all the easy ones,
Yes.
because they were close.
Yeah.
We're now in no man's land where some of these are gonna be very hard to get to.
Yeah.
It's been really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because it is confusing, winter water, fall water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe someday we'll just get to winter water period and that's it.
Well, I'm encouraged that the cost of service is covering the service. Good to hear that. It's still expensive to do, but it's.
But we're not covering the 40,000 acre feet that we put into the system. We only get 8,000 out.
Right.
I will say though, I appreciate you bringing that up. A lot of times, although we're diverting that larger amount, that gets cross-checked and ends up back into the creek. Because winter water usage is much less than summer. And so we have to make sure there's enough head over the boxes, but if it's not being used, it just spills back and goes into the creek. So,
And if it came out of storage, then we use it, but if it came out of
yeah,
rainfall or whatever, no loss.
yeah, that's why the fall months are very challenging for us.
This is all
We don't want to
storage.
be pulling from storage, but usually that's what happens.
I have one quick
Okay.
on the very last, sentence, it says, wait, you know, there's several factors to determine annual, winter availability of the canal.
Yeah.
And lack of supplies, you know, connectivity to upstream canals, you know. And it says no place to fill excess flow. Why would you have a place to fill excess flow in the summer but not in the winter?
So, during a storm event, the flows we can see in these canal systems is well above any summertime head. Just from the sheet runoff collecting in the canals, at the end, we're gonna see flows that we don't see during irrigation season, and then sometimes there's nowhere to put it. So,
Stormwater.
so in the dry season, or in the winter season, we dry these canals up by shutting off the heads, cross-checking every chance we can to ensure we don't collect any of that natural sheet flow, we don't have water rights for it, and pushing it all out to the creeks wherever we can. But there's many locations where our spill channels aren't strategically placed where they won't do any damage, so we need to make sure those stay dry.
Yep.
In the winter, when you have the water flowing into the natural waterways, does that have any bearing on our environmental flow requirements?
So in the winter months, environmental flow requirements are usually very easy to meet because there's so much natural in the waterways already. There's not a concern. However, having said that, we still measure and ensure we meet all the flow requirements required of us by regulation. For instance, Canyon Creek, we have to put 3 CFS in there at all times. Even if there's 20 CFS of naturally provided water, we're still contributing our 6 CFS because we're obligated to.
Thank you.
Any other board, questions? Any member of the public like to comment on our discussion, NID off-season water services? Start on your phone. Like to comment now, it's your time. No action will be taken today on this item, it's informational. Okay, thank you, Chip. Thank you. At this time, we'll take a brief break.
More bothers me.
It's bad.
All right, we are live.
Okay, we're back in session. Next item is, temporary soil allocation program. Doug and Shannon, good morning.
Good morning. So we brought back the TSLs. You remember on the March 23rd, we had a kind of a workshop discussion, talked about the program, we got some direction from the board. And so now this is our attempt at taking that direction and making adjustments to the document. There's just a couple things. We removed the entire fee calculation requirement that we talked about in TSL. We've also made it so that the TSL costs are actually going to be in the future, at some future time, should the main ever go in. We also adjusted the easement to allow that they'll supply us with the easements that we need for the future pipeline in the future, and not getting them up front, because otherwise we potentially have a bunch of easements that we'd have to maintain, be responsible for, et cetera.
Sure.
That there'd be no necessarily any reason for us to have them prior to that. So, the modifications still allow the folks to connect. They'll pay their capacity fees, their installation fee of the meter, whatever backflow they need, et cetera. And it would be operating just like it does now. They would not be responsible for the district installed pipeline reimbursement, which is policy 3175, because they've agreed to pay for a future component of the transmission main or the distribution main in the future. So they weren't before required to pay that, and they're still not required to pay that component. We made some changes into the actual rules and regs, section 1012. That was pretty minor. Most of the information really sits in the agreement. So we gave you both a clean and a red line copy of both. I don't know if there's necessarily, I'm not gonna go through every one, but maybe in the agreement, we just, identified the termination clause, what happens if either we need the termination clause or they do. So we've got that spelled out in there, and that's kind of the last section, section 8 of that agreement. With that, it probably makes more sense, just, you guys have any questions or comments about the potential changes?
I thought they were good changes.
I have a couple questions, just clarification. On 10.12.05, the requirement, number D, the execute water service agreement for parcels not fronting NID water lines, if necessary. What is if necessary, like, not be necessary?
So,
On receipt of notice of the
what
application.
section was that again? I'm sorry.
Page five, D.
What's that?
It will, for them to, we can take that out.
So it is not a need.
It's always gonna be required.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so we can just delete it. And the same thing is on E, is as needed, and, I'm curious when
If they request a will serve letter, then we can do that, yeah.
That's not our process.
That's not a
Oh, okay.
process, so if they want to get a building permit and build a home, they'll need a will serve letter that they have water at the property. And so that's just as they need it from us,
only
right?
gonna be building. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Yep.
Otherwise, it looks good to me.
Yeah, it does, it's really good too.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Looks good to me.
I have, if I may, one recommended change to the agreement at page 2 of 4, PDF page 15, section 2, easement language. The new language is, we would request an easement upon notification of customer by district of completion of a future main. I think we want that easement on the front end of the project, so strike completion of the,
Good catch.
and insert intent to construct a future main. So it would read, upon notification to customer by district of intent to construct a future main, customer shall provide without compensation, and continue with the current language.
You're on number 2?
Yes, the,
Page 2, bullet 2, the agreement, second paragraph.
Oh. Okay.
comments or?
Any comments or questions?
One other thing, we would also, assuming that we move forward and make these adoption changes, would rescind, 10B of the rate schedule, which has that TSL calculator, that per
Oh,
foot
right.
cost one. We'd get rid of that because that's no longer applicable.
That makes sense.
So we just remove that as well.
Okay, would any member of the public like to comment on this item, temporary service location program, proposed changes? Start on your phone. All right, see that, and no action to be taken today, so.
No, it's, provide input, so if you guys are comfortable with these, and we'll go ahead and make these corrections and put it back as a consent item for adoption in
Correct.
next meeting.
Very good.
Sounds good.
What's comfortable with that? Great.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Shannon, too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.
We won't think that.
All right. Number 5, general manager's reports.
Thank you, President Beerwagen. I just have a couple of really brief items. There has been discussion amongst the president and I and Mr. Jones regarding participation or not in the fair this year. And so although it is within the general manager's authority from a procurement perspective, there is a fairly substantial cost to participating. And so it generally runs about $17,000 to $20,000 a year. And that's related to booth construction, payment for the location. We typically purchase a banner package, and then we also, staff is not really willing to volunteer their time to work the booth. And so it does cost significant overtime costs as well. That can escalate that $17,000 mark upwards to $20,000, $25,000. So we wanted some direction from the board as to your desire, whether we participate in the fair this year at that manner. One option would be to not have a booth, but to purchase a banner package and be a sponsor, which there are varying levels from $2,500 up to $10,000. And you could essentially sponsor a gate or an area, be an area sponsor, and you could put banners and whatnot out. We do not. We do not participate in the Placer County Fair.
Anyway.
No.
Right. Not for quite a while, that I know of.
Not that we're aware of. They may have sometime in the long, long past, but.
To me, whatever approach we take, I would like to see it consistent with Placer and Nevada County. I agree.
Better approach is certainly.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, and a sponsorship, yeah, I like
So
that.
Jennifer said, we talked about this a lot the other day, and Karen was in on that conversation. I had suggested we take the board for noodling.
What if we piggyback with something, like, doesn't the Farm Bureau have a?
That was a suggestion. I stated that I thought in the past, somewhere in the past, that they were in the experienced area, not in the main exhibit building. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, which it would have lot more impact.
Impact for the people that are water users.
Yeah.
Right, rather.
But we still have a staff problem.
But it's not the same.
Or don't we just do a banner with the
It's
police?
not staffed all the time by anyone, really.
The NID booth has been.
Has
Because
been, yeah.
typically, there's always a question on something. We found that there really isn't a large volume of people coming to ask for particular NID-related questions. And so it's just it's a cost to be there.
It's just a,
It's been a historical
yeah.
element to the district. We do provide the fair, other help outside of being a sponsor, through certain staff in the maintenance department. They go on a Saturday or Sunday prior to the fair and actually move hay and feed around for the barn. And so that is a request that we typically just offer some staff time to go do, and it's pretty de minimis. But that is one level that we actually, over the years, have really helped, and that's not including if that even $17,000 to $20,000. So I think that's an offer that most of the maintenance staff really enjoy doing, and certain ones kind of go and they help out in that regard. So that's prior to the fair. This other element is banners at certain locations we've had in the past. You get in the pamphlet, you get on the docket, but in terms of looking at the overall price and the cost and just staff time, building a fair booth even.
And what do we get? You know, it's like, what is the cost benefit, right?
People come from all over in the Nevada County Fair in
Right.
particular because of its uniqueness. So there's people that come up from Sacramento, that really have no idea who NID even is. And we're kind of stuck between certain folks that there's no unified sort of utility location or public entity space at the fair. I'm not sure about the Farm Bureau, like what they do. I know they're very highly engaged in the animal location, but.
I'd like to see the super band package and drop the booth. I'd like to see what's available for Placer County to be able to have some name recognition there as well.
I'm sure they've got sponsorship
Is the
opportunities
banner-
there, no problem.
Require a person to go and put the materials down here, like
Yeah.
leaflets and drought information?
Probably.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we go and
But that's pretty
pick,
limited.
I would assume so.
that's pretty,
Put up a banner somewhere?
they
I think we have to put up the.
tell you where,
But
where.
what does the person just stand there?
Oh, no, I think, maybe I misunderstood Ricky. It's not that we have to be with our banner. We have to bring our banner and then leave it, yeah.
And then banners there, do we have other materials, like?
No, because the banner would be up high somewhere, or on the gate fence coming in.
Oh, I got it.
If you have a booth, yes, that's where you have drought information and handout.
I think a banner's cool, because it just
Yeah.
gives you name recognition, and like, we're supporting, because we do.
Right, exactly.
We don't need to staff
So a
it.
couple of things, I'm gonna miss the little hour clock, the 3-minute one, take a shower. That was 2014 drought. Or the little coaster in the water, little teardrop.
Oh, I like those.
Those
Swag.
those are good.
Those are all expensive items.
Yeah. So I can see it at the Ag Experience, just
The banner,
a
you mean?
banner or
Yeah.
something simple.
So we will purchase a banner package and we'll try to get it in the Ag Experience.
Okay.
And then-
Also for
I'm good.
And then Placer County.
And we'll,
same thing.
yeah, we'll find out what's going on.
Call down to Placer and see what's going on there.
How's this banner thing?
It's in between $2,500 and about $7,000 to $10,000. So we'll go for the mid-level.
Per?
It's not per banner. There's, you get a variety of things with each sponsorship package. So it depends on if you're platinum, gold, silver.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got specific high view banner locations and then lower view banner locations. So we'll talk to them and figure out
It's
a good spot.
We could have Ruben hand painted.
Great.
Well, I just want to say, I've always been a fan of the booth, and I was looking for things that
And then I had one more item. So when we are going, there is a capital improvement project that was approved in our 2022 annual budget to redo the ramp that comes from the parking lot into this building, and that is the ramp that the public utilizes to access the meetings. It's in dire need of being completely redone. So, there'll be a little bit of access limitations during that time, and there's also gonna be construction going on. So I am looking into moving a series of about 6 meetings between the Plan for Water, as well as our regular board meetings, to the Gold Miners and or another location, as we're talking different locations right now. And I think it might be a good time, from their perspective, that with strategic planning, in the event that there are additional folks that want to come participate in person, that this will allow us also to accommodate that. So the timing's kind of lining up perfectly. So I just wanted to let the board know and then let the public know, so stay tuned. We will be finding an actual location here soon and be posting it. If anyone has any questions. And that's all.
So, we're also could try to time it for the first one in August, but there is no board meeting.
Yes, it'll be all of July, first one in August. It'll probably be about 6 weeks, so we'll give you the exact timing.
That reminds me, we get we don't have a board meeting on the opening day of the fair, is that correct?
Correct.
We're still not doing that, no.
Unless if the board desires, does the board still desire to go to the opening breakfast of the fair? When you adopted your annual board meeting calendar, in the January timeframe, you did note that you were going to cancel that meeting, so it's entirely up to the board.
We could broadcast from the fair.
Yeah, we could get a little.
We could. Huell Hauser, you kind of remind me of Huell Hauser.
Huell Hauser.
Yeah.
California.
You, Rich, we're gonna put you front and center.
Yeah.
You can be our Huell.
So why don't we play,
For the national anthem, because I'm booked.
Yeah, that's right.
why don't we play it a little bit by ear, and if we have some pressing need to schedule a meeting at that time, we can go ahead and do that.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Good job. Yeah.
Perfect.
And then, while you're talking about this, so what about the other plan for water meetings? Because I note the piece of paper on the front door that says we're only allowing 6 or 10 or whatever.
Oh, it just needs to be removed.
It needs to be removed. So we're
Correct.
welcoming anybody who wants to come.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
I would recommend people, though, for space purposes, if they so choose to feel comfortable on Zoom, that they utilize Zoom, because obviously can get.
And what about the idea of, I've done many of these where you register so that the entity knows how many people are planning on coming. And so on the Zoom thing, it'll say, please register if you're coming in person. And then folks could do that, and we know if we've got 8 or 30.
Yeah, we can do that. There is some legal concerns, even if you don't register, we can't tell you can't come in. We can only do that with
So
occupancy.
we would just say to help us plan for space, you know,
Yeah.
if you're able, please register.
We'll look into it.
The caveat is, we do have, we have 85 capacity in this room
Right.
currently. We really don't, with the new layout of how the boardroom is right now, we do not have room for 50
Right.
public.
Yeah, capacity of a room is not based off of the current setup.
Yes, correct. So it is very limited,
It's a fire.
current system.
Well, that's why I was suggesting have the registration so we could go to the Lutheran church or something.
Yeah, it does create additional logistical staff work to always have an off-site meeting, but,
I know, but that's why registering might be helpful.
yeah, we're gonna look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Then you're gonna have diversity quotas.
All right, and then Chip, you wanna do a quick water supply update?
I'm not offended.
Oh, I think, I already had it.
Okay, we'll do a quick water supply update, April 27th, 2022.
You know, Chip, can we get, I have spent really more time than needed to go and find things on our website, because it's not really intuitive where these things are.
Okay.
And so then the other half of that question is, can we as the board get PDFs of these? Because I don't know where to get them.
Well, they are updated a bit, so if you go to our webpage, at the very top, there's a bullet that says water.
Yeah.
It's right there.
They're right there, because then it usually has a drop down and there's all these.
Be labeled as Bowman Lake precipitation and storage. They're both in there, just click those links and it'll
Oh.
open these up, and we're updating them every week.
Maybe I made it harder than it needed.
Your slideshow usually has expanded just more than just the 3, you do the statewide,
Yeah, I also have a link to the statewide reservoirs, if that
Mhm.
interests you, at the very bottom of
Yeah,
the
that's
page.
the,
It gets you into CDEC, and you can see all the current reservoirs across the state. Okay, so, Bowman Lake precipitation, that last round of storms really helped us out. It was a good round. We're up to 56.6 inches of precip, that's 89% of average. We happen to be in that zone within the state that really got the brunt of the storms, which is awesome. April 1st snow survey, so this is old. We are doing a May 1st snow survey, thanks to those storms, to see where we've progressed or have not. Initial numbers right now look like about 66% of average. So April 1st, we were 55, we've actually gone up to 66%, so that's good news. Again, we'll come back with these updated numbers in the very near future. And the best news of all, here's NID's reservoir storage. We're at 105% of average for this time of year at 240,000 acre feet.
gaining about 1,000 acre feet a day in runoff. So, really looking good, and we're actually now changing from ways to manage and conserve to, oh my gosh, we're getting close to spill, so we need to start passing more and more water. So it's a good problem to have, especially given the year we're in. However, let's move down. The 8 to 14 day temperature outlook looks at near to below normal for us, which is good. The 8 to 14 day precip looks a little wet. This is a moving target. The last forecast I saw looked a little promising, and then I looked again this morning and they took it out. So anyway, regardless, take it for what you will. Again, these are always their best guess. State of California, however, has not changed their drought outlook, even with the storms that came through. I will say, though, that this drought monitor page is not solely a reflection on water supply. It's a multitude of different things that come into play that develop the data for this. And that includes soil moisture and a whole bunch of other things. So it's not just water supply. But regardless, the rest of the state still in drought, still hurting, and that continues to be reflected in mainly Lake Shasta. It just has not responded at all yet. The strange thing for me when I look at this slide is that if you look at the past years, so for instance, 76, 77, and 2020, 21, we were already starting that downward turn in Shasta. This year, we just seem to be flatlining. Hopefully it catches itself and just continues, but time will tell. But it definitely is.
Would you like to know why?
It's management.
So the senior water right holders on the Sacramento River, they're called Sacramento River Settlement Contractors. Their contract says they're entitled to either 100% supply or 75% supply. And for 60, 70 years, that's where they've been, either 100% or 75%. This particular year, they're going to be at about 15 to 20%. So normally you would see ag demands coming on and that curve dropping down. But because I would call it a breach scenario under their contract with the federal government, that's why that line, you're not seeing that ag demand come on.
Right. There you go.
That's cool. Thank you.
The rest of these reservoirs are actually showing some response to the storms we had. Here's Oroville, and you can see it made a pretty rapid turn up. It's not going to get to average, and snowpack just doesn't really support that, but it is looking better than it has. And then you get closer to home, and here we go, Folsom Lake, 100%. Fuller's Bar, 100%. So we're kind of in that boat of the area that just took the brunt of the storms, and our water supplies are doing just fine.
And they're gonna be faced with the same spill.
They are already spilling, yeah, that's correct. Or managing flows, that's probably the better way to say it. That's what we're doing, we're generating power.
Managing our flows.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think I've provided this slide in the past. It deserves a little explanation. So this is term 91, but the best way to look at this is the delta in excess or not? In other words, does the delta have enough flow or does it not? So the red half of this chart is when the delta does not have enough flow and curtailments become an issue, okay? The blue line is real time. The dotted blue line is last year, and then the vertical dotted lines are when it went into effect last year. So the main thing I wanted to point out on this slide is that we were running the risk of curtailments coming on very early, and the state warned us of that. However, the last little bit of this graph, you can see that line takes a downward trend pretty rapidly, and that's specifically due to the round of storms we had in April. So essentially, those storms bought us a little reprieve and have pushed curtailments hopefully a little further down the road. And that's really the only reason I wanted to provide this slide to you.
Slide.
Yeah, very cool.
It's something we check regularly just to see what's coming. So in summary, while precipitation remains below average, our storage is really good. We got a huge boost from the April storms. We got a pretty decent snowpack up around Jackson Meadows and Bowman, which is where we needed it the most. Those were the two reservoirs that were behind. We did conduct a May 1st snow survey. I'll be bringing that information to you. We will purchase PG&E water again this year, but only if and when it's necessary and where we can. So if we're all full and all spilling, there's no point in spending the money.
True.
We'll manage it appropriately. And then I put in here, the forecast will be updated for the next board meeting. That's really because the state is still in drought, continues to lag behind, and the governor, as we're all aware, sent out an executive order that basically says that all water agencies must implement stage 2 of their drought contingency plan. They did have a webinar last week to discuss the details of it, and quite frankly, it is almost word for word what the governor's executive order has in it, and it just says we're not after a specific target of 20%, we're just telling you to turn on stage 2, because we anticipate when you do those actions, you'll get 20% conservation anyway. So it wasn't very clear about fines or an actual specific target. Really, it just says implement stage 2 of your drought contingency plan, and only for your urban customers. So we're working on the resolution. I'm a little hesitant initially I was gonna bring it to the board next week, but the official adoption of this is not anticipated until June. So there's a chance it may change as we're working on the resolution.
Yeah, it'll likely be adopted by the State Water Board at one of their May meetings.
Yeah.
But then it goes to the Office of Administrative Law, which takes about 30 days, so it's likely to be effective in June.
We can take it to our board prior to the 30-day waiting period.
So we will have something teed up for you.
Yeah.
But that's why I said we'll come back with more detailed information and a resolution.
We're just still watching to see if it's getting revised based off of the comments from the draft.
I was just gonna say, I will work with staff on a comment letter for the district. I understand why the state has an interest in, furthering a stage 2 drought, kind of uniformity. But the concern I have is kind of a communications challenge, because on one hand, we have surplus water conditions. That opens up local water cells to our, near out-of-district neighbors. And yet, on the other hand, we're telling folks that we need to conserve and we're in a drought. And that's just challenging from a communications standpoint. So, you know, given that, and I also happen to have another client in a very similar situation, South Feather, they're also contemplating a South to Delta transfer this year. So I think a comment letter along the lines of some flexibility, if you're fortunate, which NID is, to have local supply conditions that wouldn't call for stage 2, and in a position to provide some local water transfers that could certainly help our neighbors, that there ought to be some flexibility in the language of the emergency regulation to account for that.
So that was my question. We could be in stage 2 plus surplus simultaneously. And we could be asking our customers in district to conserve while delivering outside due to the surplus, which kind of throws us into some legal problems, or?
No.
So it's communication problem.
Communication only.
And then would we be penalizing those stage 2 customers with the drought pricing?
I think no pricing, so again, I'm working on the resolution.
Okay.
It will be a modified version of a stage 2, because obviously we're not gonna do the pricing measure.
Right, okay, good.
And the state was very clear in their webinar that it was really about demand management measures in the stage 2 drought declaration, not all the other things. So, we'll be enacting those, and, again, I'll come back to the board with a modified version that really just spells out, okay, you can only water 3 days a week and at these times, and these are the things we're gonna implement. And again, we're gonna focus on education and not necessarily punishment for our treated water customers. We're gonna really encourage them to save 20%, but if we're also communicating that we have excess water and we're selling to others, how can we then ask them that we're gonna, tell them we're gonna fine them for using water? So that goes back to Dustin's point of it's a mixed message.
And we keep in mind, another unique thing about NID that is only a few other districts, to my knowledge, have this, but this dual raw water system, treated water system. I don't know what 20% of your, I mean, it's hundreds, not thousands of acre feet, right, in treated water savings.
Right.
Couple of thousand.
You can save that by cutting the irrigation short hours or a day, you know?
The team did last year. They, more conservatively operated the canals and achieved a greater conservation than.
So I think, you know, one of the things to consider here, and we as staff will work on this, but let's say the block of water, for purposes of discussion, let's say it's 1,000 acre feet, that equates to 20% savings. And then we adopt measures to, you know, that are applied equally to our customers that we believe will save that water in storage for next year. That then is a more uniform way to communicate to our customers, allow for these local transfers and so on. So just an idea for us to work on and then for the board to consider.
The other uniform comment back to the state during the webinar, and it was Northern California all the way to Southern California, is we have ample supplies to meet our urban water demand, and we still have to do this. So we're kind of echoing the sentiments of many other water users in the state. See where it goes.
So the numbers are saying that we increased 4,000 acre feet, even though the irrigation season started.
Yeah.
And, which is great. And do you anticipate getting up to 270,000 in storage?
No. No, I don't think we'll get there. But you bring up a very good point, and we started irrigation season thinking we were going to be pulling from storage to do so, and in turn, that did not end up being the case. We used the natural runoff. Demands dropped significantly because of the rain. People just weren't using water. So we really haven't even started pulling down the reservoirs yet, and in fact, as I mentioned at the beginning, we may have to start doing that for reservoir management more than demand management.
Yeah.
In other words, we're getting close to being
Flood
concerned about
control.
fill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
It's really years different, isn't it?
It's amazing what a couple good storms can do for you, that are aptly timed.
Right, that's right.
And this year, that red line will go down in history, or goes up, over, up, over, up. It doesn't curve up, it just.
Yeah, no, I just continue to reflect on the precip. It's not very often you see a flat line like that, but the last 2 years have just been very strange. Yeah. All right.
I have a question. So the executive order says we have to focus on treated water. But we all know that demand management is in raw water that we need to focus on. Like you said, if we save raw water, we'll solve our problem. And so are we going to also address like the rural residential landscape and just outdoor watering district-wide, just to try and get it on the radar and start messaging to our raw water customers, that our landscape customers, you know, that they use it for?
So we in the resolution will bring out all of this, but we're gonna encourage our irrigation customers to practice efficient water use, and flood irrigation is discouraged, things like that. I don't know that we specifically call out irrigation water uses, because we don't have a differentiation in our rules and regulations or our customer classes that spell that out separately. And in fact, our water rights don't even spell it out separately. So we've generally taken a universal approach to our irrigation water and any regulations we put on them. I will also say that the executive order is specifically very absent on irrigation water. It really only mandates urban water conservation. And so if we're doing compliance just to comply, do we then restrict our irrigation water usage even though we don't necessarily have to? That becomes the challenging question. If the state puts out a target of you will save 20% versus you will just implement stage 2 of your drought plan, then that may change how we approach this.
So there is I can't remember, Chip, maybe you guys do, but if it's in the same governor's executive order, if it's one of his earlier ones, but there is some coming regulations on what's called non-functional turf.
Ornamental turf.
Oh, it is in this one.
It's in this one.
We could restrict the watering of ornamental turf with
Oh, it is,
irrigation water.
yeah, it is a restriction of ornamental turf on all C and II customers. So business.
Commercial.
We can do.
It does have a caveat that says that you can still water if there's trees, because you've got to protect your trees. But yes, that is in the current executive order. Again, you're
And-
preserving.
And we haven't finished the draft proposal yet, so we'll continue to take all this input and craft
Does the board
something.
have discretion, meaning we could say, okay,
Yeah.
state order is 20%, whatever, and we then also would like to ask the raw water customers to achieve 5% or 10% or something, because it makes a bigger difference. Do we have that discretion? We don't have to wait for a state order, or do we get into legal troubles, or?
You have the discretion. Now, in 2014, 2015 time period, then it was a 36% reduction. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chip, but, we took the view that we understand the spirit of your ask here, state. But despite our comment letters, you didn't accept our, request for flexibility, given our unique circumstances. We nonetheless kind of implemented in a way that saved that 36%.
Okay.
But was a more equitable and it just made more sense locally here to us.
We could consider applying the watering per day restrictions that are applied to urban uses to ornamental turf for the raw water customers. There's no reason why the board couldn't take a more stringent action
I
than,
would think that would be prudent, and it helps in the messaging. It's like, oh yeah, you folks over here can water your 10 acres of grass, but you over here can't.
I just think everybody needs to be aware the implementation and regulating that is not likely, but.
Well, I have one other thing, because I've got the crop report that came out, this was very interesting to me, and I don't know if everybody else saw this, but, in terms of our top crops, golf courses were number 3. It's like, what? Do we have the discretion to say, golf courses, you need to cut?
The governor, in 2014,
20%
2015, golf courses were included in something you could water.
Yeah,
I knew that, but I'm just wondering if that is part of what we could call out specifically. It's such a huge issue.
No,
I know, but it doesn't matter that we have had them, things are changing.
there's just a bigger legal risk because there's a financial impact to them not watering. The golf course is essentially their asset, right? That
Right.
belongs to their business. It would be a little bit legally risky. Now, if you were going to say all ornamental turf between all customer classes, you may only water it 3 days a week. Now you're kind of treating them all the same.
Right.
If you picked a golf course versus a cattle rancher,
I see.
you would get
Well, that
yourself
makes
in some
sense, but
legal
I
risk.
guess I would advocate that we would make it even across all customer classes, ornamental turf.
but golf courses are a multi-million-dollar investment.
I understand.
And bringing in.
And so is your farm, and
I
so is
understand.
Sue Hook's ranch, and so,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has that. Okay.
The pitch to try and get raw water, ornamental landscape watering, to have a landscape watering campaign to try and get, it'll help us not have to buy PG&E water, which helps us save money. And so it's to the benefit to do outreach across the board, to say, if you're, just do an outdoor landscaping campaign.
So I hear you. The challenge that I struggle with on this particular topic is our irrigation customers buy an allotment of water. And they feel like they've purchased that and they should be able to use it to the maximum amount they've purchased. The difference between that and our treated water customers, the treated water customers only get billed for what they use. So when they conserve, they're also saving money. So that's a very big challenge for us, is that the irrigation water customers have paid for their full allotment and they want to use their full allotment. So this is one of the challenges, but again, we'll write up a resolution and we'll tackle many of these topics. We had explored, stopping the irrigation season a week or two early to meet these target numbers, and I can tell you that if you look at 20% for our treated water, it's really only about a week of irrigation water.
I remember discussion from last year, that was de minimis, really.
Yeah, it's not a bunch, but that becomes a question of, okay, if you have enough water, do you still stop the season early? If it's not required by state law, that becomes a question. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Chip.
Thanks, Chip.
All right.
I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Chip's presentation. And Laura's comment, and being part of the guilty set who has, external landscape or, watering. Part of the challenge that we have is that we purchased a property that got that as an integral component. And so, and I think there are a lot of people in a similar circumstance, and I think that as a district, it's not so much education, because it's not rocket science. It's really, recontextualizing your sense of landscape. And unless you see models of where you can transform an environment, it just seems to me like, we're on an uphill curve for the persuasion factor. And that, I just think that as a board and management, if we can kind of take off, we're gonna educate people and tell them they need to do it differently, versus saying, let's help you reconceptualize, man. Let's help you to see a different way of having a beautiful environment in a water-wise way. Because I just think that it's,
Well, there's tons of examples in Southern California, San Diego, Arizona, I mean, you just look all over.
Yeah.
And, Roseville, my dad's home, they paid to rip out all of the turf and put in whatever it was he wanted to put in. But, there are examples everywhere. We just happen to be in this really water-rich environment, right?
And you also made a great case for edible landscaping.
Right.
Eat what you grow.
Right, there you go.
My donkeys do.
The donkeys do.
Yeah, well, they
I've been
do.
there,
We feed the grass to our donkeys, but is that really a good use of the water? I kind of doubt it,
I kind of doubt it.
You're getting carbon sequestration at the same time
Yeah.
from the grass.
But we can't have it both ways. We have to find ways, and I think getting some science on this, and, anyway, I just think we're not going to educate people into changing. We are going to have to provide incentives, or examples, rebates, really put some dollars behind it.
And we got master gardeners right here on site. that-
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
One of the,
it's multifaceted too, it's water efficiency, like, I'm
Yeah.
trying to educate my sister, you don't need to run that sprinkler 24/7.
Exactly. Yeah, so there's the
But we
education
have done it
component.
for 50 years,
Yeah.
because we had the water, and it
Yeah.
was cheap.
yeah, I do think we should look into, and this has been on my list, I know Director Hull and I've talked about it several times, is look into bringing back some cash for grass program, or some type of, irrigation modification program, some incentive-based program, and typically you can get grant funding for those. I have had the opportunity recently to meet with Sierra Harvest, and they are willing to be a partner on kind of helping with this transition and getting the word out, educating through their educational series. So I think we just need to kind of bundle up a whole package of incentives, education, informational, so people can start understanding. In fact, my own home, I did the Cash for Grass program through the state. It was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, but even when the program ran out of money, a lot of people in our neighborhood will look at our yard and then go modify their yard based off of, okay, it can look nice and not, if the grass is removed. So, we'll start looking back into that again. It's been on my list, I just haven't, but I'm a firm believer in those programs. I think the more ornamental turf we can get rid of would be better. But, there's always a flip side to the coin, right? And that's revenue from a specific revenue source that would be reduced. Yeah, right.
So we're gonna have to grapple with that generally. Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you.
And that's all we had.
Okay. More comments on this? Board of Directors, items report. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first, because mine is short and simple. So I have been volunteering with the League of Women Voters on the various campaign and election for this upcoming June election. And it's been great because it's afforded me the opportunity to get out in the community, receive questions and comments from folks about NID, and do some education, actually. Yeah, we got a whole lot of water, but we're still gonna conserve. And just hold tight, it's kind of the message. And then I have also, yesterday attended along with Director Johansson, the ad hoc South Sutter Water District meetings, with regard to their, water filing protest. And that was very interesting. I'm under confidentiality, so I can't give a lot of detail, but I did attend, and it was great. It was a good meeting. That's it for me.
Yeah, Saturday went to Earth Day celebration, Sierra Pines, with Methodist Church, yeah, in Lake of the Pines, excellent. I think it's just gonna build and get better. They had a good turnout and a lot of great presentations, and I got to sit down with Tracy Sheehan for about half hour and just, banter back and forth, and it was great. So, I think a lot of good came out of it. So next Tuesday, the California Farm Bureau is having a water forum, and Carla Nemeth, Director of Department of Water Resources, will be there. Joaquin Esquivel, State Water Resources Control Board Chair, will be there. And they have divided up, all the different North Coast, Central Coast, Mountain. So the Mountain District, Alpine, Amador, Calaveras, El Dorado, Inyo, Mono, Lassen, Mariposa, Modoc, Nevada, Placer, Plumas, Shasta, Sierra, Siskiyou, and Tuolumne. And I'll be representing the Nevada County Farm Bureau. So if you have any questions, we're supposed to have some FaceTime with these people. And so let's ask the questions we need to ask and see what the answers are, because what I saw in that executive order, or the voluntary agreement, MOU, was they're looking to buy water from irrigated pasture. So they wanted to buy that water off of irrigated pasture, which really hurts us in this district, because we have a lot of people who irrigate pastures. They're looking, that's where they're gonna make up the shortfalls on their water in California.
And the rice growers as well, right?
Well, the rice growers were they didn't have enough water, but yesterday saw a lot of, they're gonna be under 50% planting. They'll rely on, well water, and that's what's happening. That's why you don't see Shasta coming down yet, because, I bought some of that Shasta water and won't start pulling it until August. That's when the wells go down. So that's the same thing with the rice, or all those other guys. So, some point, we're gonna need the surface water, and we'll start pulling it. So, a lot going on. And then, gonna meet with Lake Wildwood, Lake Committee, and also their general manager, and, hopefully Jennifer and Chip also, and I think we're gonna have to have something written up more solid for them than just maybe speculation, but they would like to meet next week.
Oh, next week?
Yeah, I sent you an email.
Yeah, we just haven't scheduled it yet.
Yeah. So, but
Director Hall.
I wanted to share some feedback from one of the participants in the group that Jennifer put together. So one of our large rancher in Placer County, and he just expressed an opinion. So this is the group that's meeting with the environmental community and the contractors, and he just had nothing but extreme positive praise for the engagement of the group, the tenor of the conversation, the strides NID management is making to include and have kind of cross pollination of ideas. So anyway, kudos to you for conceptualizing that, and just recognition of the high impact it's having.
Good.
And then I'm talking to a road association that is hoping to access NID raw water. And they've got a lot of uphill battles, kind of barriers to have that happen among themselves before we bring them to the NID team.
Thank you, Director Hall. Director Peters?
Yeah, I had a quite coverage, but I also got very good feedback. I mean, the conversations are really, really good from what I'm hearing with this ad hoc group, or this group that you put together. So I've also gotten very positive. I was wish I could know what to talk about, but that's okay. One thing I've been doing, so I've had a very quiet couple of weeks working on my vineyard shooting, whatever. But, I've been looking into Open ET and its satellite imaging, and it's phenomenal. And, do you know, is anyone in the
I don't even know what that is.
It's satellite-based imagery that's available across the entire United States. USGS has done it. You can put an area around my vineyard, and it'll tell you what the ET is over the years, how much water's been used since 2015. You can do satellite, and you can see the green, you know, it's like Google Earth. And then it tells you water use everywhere. You can click on anywhere, and it'll tell you what's that water use. You can click on the parcels, we can figure out how many ponds there are. It's amazing data. It's all geospatial reference databases, and it's phenomenal. And when we're starting to do our demand management for the Plan for Water, we really should look into that, because it is the current state of the art of what they're doing. All the data's available.
What does ET stand for, Laura? Pardon me.
Evapotranspiration.
Evapotranspiration, thank you.
And so it's an amazing platform, and if staff hasn't had a chance to look at it, Doug, I really encourage you to look at it, because it's off the charts phenomenal. And so that's good. And so next week is Aqua Conference. And so,
Oh, that's right.
Yep, so both Ricky and I are going. Is anyone else going to Aqua?
Chris, are you going?
I was going, yes.
Oh, good.
Is mine okay?
Are you going? No.
Yeah, and so last conference, they had a big session about this open ET and using the satellite imagery. And we really need to, I really encourage us to look into it. So I'll be going to Aqua next week.
Me too, I forgot about that part.
Okay. That's another thing I was gonna say, so that's my report. All right. At this time, we'll take a public comment for items we consider closed session, if you'd like to comment.
Mr. President, we do not expect any announcement other than direction given to legal counsel, so.
Okay. There will be no announcement. All right, at this time, we will adjourn the open the closed session.